The sun hung low and merciless over Silver Ridge that August afternoon in 1882, turning the air into something you could almost chew. Dust drifted in slow golden sheets across Main Street, settling on everything like a second skin. The wanted posters nailed to the hitching posts and the clapboard walls of the assay office fluttered weakly in the hot breeze, each one bearing the same snarling face. Joaquin, El Cuervo Vargas. Black hat cocked, raven feather tucked into the band, scar running from eye to jaw like a lightning strike gone wrong. The ink had faded, but the threat hadn't. Wyatt Harlan rode in slow, letting the dapple-gray gelding pick its own pace. The horse's hooves made the only deliberate sound on the empty street. Soft, measured thuds against packed earth. Harlan kept his wide-brimmed black hat low, the brim shadowing gray eyes that had seen too much already. His brown duster was frayed at the cuffs and hem, stained with alkali and old blood that never quite washed out. He hadn't planned to stop here. Silver Ridge was just another name on a map between Tombstone and nowhere. Another town that might let a man pass through without asking questions. He almost kept riding. Then the sound reached him. Glass shattering inside Elias Whitaker's saloon, followed by a low, ugly laugh that carried on the still air like smoke. A woman's sharp intake of breath, a man's grunt of pain. Harlan's right hand tightened on the reins. The gelding felt it, ears flicking back. For a long second, the street held its breath with him. He could still turn the horse, ride north until the town was only a shimmer on the horizon, and pretend he hadn't heard. He'd done it before, plenty of times. But the laugh came again, thicker this time, and something in it made the muscles along Harlan's jaw knot. He swung down, boots striking dirt with a soft puff of dust. The spurs gave one quiet jingle, sharp, solitary, the only clean note in the afternoon. He tied the gray to the rail outside the saloon, patted its neck once, and stepped up onto the boardwalk. Through the grimy windows, he saw them. Hank Scar Bullock stood over old Jedediah Jed Malone like a man standing over a dog he'd just kicked. Jed was on his knees among broken bottle shards, one hand pressed to a split lip, the other raised in weak surrender. Blood dripped dark onto the sawdust. 3 more Black Vultures lounged at the bar, black neckerchiefs loose around their throats, grinning like they'd paid for the show. Scar's fist was already cocked for another swing. "Old man," Scar drawled, voice thick with whiskey and meanness. "You forget who owns this place now. You forget who decides who drinks free." Jed coughed wetly. "I just asked for what's owed, Hank. That's all." Scar laughed again, the sound scraping like a rusty blade. "Owed? Ain't nobody owed you nothing but a dirt-nap piano player." Harlan pushed through the swinging doors. The room went still. Every head turned. The 3 at the bar straightened. Scar froze mid-laugh, fist still raised. Jed looked up through swollen eyes, hope flickering like a match in wind. Harlan didn't speak. He simply crossed the floor, spurs chiming once with each step, slow and even. The smell hit him. Whiskey, sweat, old tobacco, fresh blood. He stopped 3 feet from Scar, close enough that the bigger man had to tilt his head to meet Harlan's shadowed gaze. Scar's lip curled. "You lost, stranger?" Harlan's voice came low, almost soft. "Man's asking for what he's owed. Seems fair." Scar barked a laugh. "Fair? This ain't about fair. This is about who's still breathing tomorrow." He stepped closer, chest puffed, the black neckerchief shifting against his sweat-dark shirt. "You got a name, mister?" "Passing through," Harlan said. Scar's eyes narrowed. "Passing through don't give you leave to stick your nose where it ain't welcome." Harlan didn't answer. He simply looked past Scar to Jed, still kneeling, still bleeding, then back to Scar. Something in that look made Scar's grin falter for half a heartbeat. He swung anyway, hard, wild, aiming for Harlan's jaw. Harlan moved like water. His left hand caught Scar's wrist mid-arc, fingers closing on the exact pressure point just above the heel of the hand. Not hard, just enough. Scar's face went white. His knees buckled. He dropped to the floorboards with a surprised grunt, arm twisted behind him, gun still holstered. The room stayed quiet except for Scar's ragged breathing. Harlan released him. Scar scrambled back, cradling his wrist, face flushed with humiliation more than pain. The other 3 Black Vultures had hands on their guns now, but none drew. Not yet. Harlan turned to the bar. Elias Whitaker stood frozen behind it, gray mustache trembling, a rag clenched in his fist like a lifeline. "Water," Harlan said quietly. Elias swallowed, nodded, fumbled for a glass. His hands shook so badly that water sloshed over the rim. Harlan laid a silver dollar on the scarred wood. He took the glass, drank slow, eyes never leaving the room. From the staircase at the back, a young woman watched. Emma Whitaker, Elias's daughter. Her dark hair was pinned loose, one sleeve rolled up to reveal a faint bruise circling her wrist like a bracelet no one had asked her to wear. Her eyes met Harlan's for the briefest second. Something passed between them. Fear, yes, but also something sharper. Recognition, hope, maybe, or the ghost of it. Scar lurched to his feet, face purple. "You're dead, mister. You hear me? Dead." Harlan set the empty glass down gently. "Water's good here," he said, same quiet tone. "Be ashamed to waste it." Scar's hand dropped toward his holster. Fingers brushed the grip. Harlan didn't move, didn't even look like he was thinking about moving. Scar froze. Then the saloon doors banged open again. Rafael El Zorro Vargas stepped inside. Tall, lean, silver-handled revolver riding low on his hip, black neckerchief knotted with care. His eyes, dark and calculating, swept the room and settled on Harlan like a hawk spotting movement in tall grass. He smiled. Thin, cold. "Gentlemen," he said, accent soft but edged. "Seems we have a guest who doesn't understand local customs." Scar spat blood onto the floor. "He put hands on me, Rafael, right in front of everybody." Rafael's smile didn't waver. "Then perhaps," he said, gaze never leaving Harlan, "we should teach him properly." Harlan stood very still. Outside, the sun slipped another inch toward the horizon. The wanted posters fluttered again, El Cuervo's face staring down at them all. And in that long, heavy silence, Hank Scar Bullock's eyes locked on the stranger who had just made him look small in front of his own kind. He didn't blink. Neither did Harlan. The saloon smelled of stale beer, old wood, and the faint copper tang of fresh blood. Harlan sat at the far end of the bar, back to the wall, the empty glass in front of him already sweating in the heat that seeped through the walls like fever. He kept his hat low, brim shadowing his face, but he could feel the eyes on him. Elias Whitaker's nervous flickers from behind the bar, the 3 Black Vultures at the poker table who hadn't taken their hands off their guns since Scar hit the floor, and the girl on the staircase, Emma Whitaker, who hadn't moved since he walked in. He wanted out, simple as that. One glass of water, one quiet exit, back on the gray gelding and gone before the sun dropped behind the dragoons. He'd learned long ago that trouble has a smell, and this place reeked of it. But the door was still 10 steps away, and every one of those steps felt longer than the last. Scar was on his feet again, cradling his right wrist like it might fall off if he let go. His face had gone from red to something darker, humiliation turning to rage the way a slow fire turns to blaze. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, and started walking. Slow, deliberate. The spurs on his boots scraped the floorboards like a warning. "You think you're clever, stranger?" Scar's voice came out thick, slurred with whiskey and hurt pride. "Think you can walk in here, lay hands on me, and just sit there drinking water like some damn preacher?" Harlan didn't answer. He traced the rim of the empty glass with one finger, slow circle, eyes on the scarred wood. Scar stopped a yard away, close enough that Harlan could smell the sweat and rot gut on him. The other three vultures rose from their chairs scraping back in a slow chorus. They fanned out without a word, habit, not thought. "You're quiet," Scar said, almost smiling now. "Quiet men usually got something to hide, or they're just cowards." He leaned in. "Which is it?" Elias Whitaker cleared his throat, voice thin. "Hank, he's just passing through. Let it lie." Scar didn't even look at him. "Shut your hole, old man. This ain't your business no more." Harlan lifted his eyes then. Gray, steady, unreadable. He spoke low, almost gentle. "Water?" Elias blinked, startled. Then he moved, fast, too fast, grabbing the pitcher with shaking hands. Water sloshed over the edge as he poured. The glass trembled when he set it down. Harlan laid another silver dollar beside the first. The coin rang once, bright and lonely. Scar laughed, short and ugly. "Look at him, paying for water like he's in church. You scared, mister? Scared to drink whiskey with real men?" The words hung there. The room waited. Harlan took the glass, drank slow, set it down empty. Scar's hand drifted to his holster. Fingers flexed. "I asked you a question." Harlan met his eyes. "I heard." Something snapped in Scar's face. He lunged, fast for a big man, right hand shooting out to grab Harlan's collar, left already curling into a fist. Harlan didn't flinch. His own left hand came up smooth, almost lazy, catching Scar's wrist again. Same spot, same pressure. Not cruel, just precise. Scar's knees folded like string cut. He dropped hard, forehead cracking against the bar edge with a dull thud. A thin line of blood appeared above his eyebrow. The three vultures froze mid-step. Harlan released the wrist. Scar stayed down, gasping, eyes wide with shock more than pain. Silence pressed in, thick as the heat. From the staircase, Emma Whitaker made a small sound, half gasp, half something else. Her knuckles were white on the banister. Elias stared at Harlan like he'd seen a ghost. Maybe he had. Harlan pushed the glass away an inch. "Good water," he said again, quieter this time. "Be ashamed to waste it." Scar pushed himself up on one arm, blood dripping onto the floorboards. His voice came out ragged. You're gonna pay for that. You hear me? You're gonna..." The saloon doors banged open. Rafael El Zorro Vargas stepped through. He moved like a man who never hurried because he never had to. Tall, lean, black coat cut sharp at the waist, silver-handled revolver catching the last slant of sunlight through the windows. His black neckerchief was tied neat, almost elegant. His eyes, dark, cold, measuring, found Harlan in less than a second and stayed there. The room seemed to shrink around that look. Raphael stopped just inside the doors. He took in Scar on the floor, the broken glass, the blood, the three men still frozen with hands near their guns. Then he looked back at Harlan. A thin smile curved his mouth. Not friendly, not angry, just interested. "Gentlemen," he said, voice soft, accented, carrying without effort. "Seems we've had a misunderstanding." Scar spat blood. He jumped me, Raphael. Right here, in front of everybody. Raphael tilted his head, studying Harlan the way a man studies a horse he might buy or shoot. I see that, he said. Then, quieter, directly to Harlan. You have a name, amigo? Harlan didn't move, didn't blink. Passing through, he said. Raphael's smile widened just a fraction. Passing through, of course. He took one step forward. The silver handle of his revolver glinted. But you've made quite an impression for a man just passing through. The air in the saloon felt heavier now, like the moment before thunder. Emma Whitaker's breath caught again, audible this time. Harlan felt it all. The weight of every eye, the slow drip of Scar's blood, the faint creak of the floorboards under Raphael's boots, the girl's gaze burning into the back of his neck. He could still walk out, could still pretend and this was nothing, could still ride away and leave Silver Ridge to its own slow death. But Raphael was looking at him like he already knew the answer to a question Harlan hadn't asked yet, and in that long, suspended quiet, the stranger in the frayed duster felt the first real tug of something he'd spent years trying to outride. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it wasn't going to let him leave clean. The saloon doors swung shut behind Rafael Vargas with a slow, deliberate creak, the sound lingering like an unfinished sentence. Dust motes drifted in the slanted orange light of late afternoon, catching on the broken glass still scattered across the floorboards. The 3 Black Vultures who'd stood ready to draw had slunk back to their table, muttering low, eyes darting toward Harlan every few seconds, like men waiting for permission to breathe again. Scar Bullock sat slumped against the bar, wrist wrapped in a filthy rag Elias had tossed him without a word. The big man's breathing was ragged, but the rage hadn't left his face. Just gone quiet, banked, waiting. Harlan stayed where he was, elbows on the bar, hat still low. The water glass sat empty between his hands. He could feel the weight of the room pressing in, the smell of spilled whiskey turning sour, the faint metallic bite of blood, the low creak of the building settling as the day cooled. He told himself he should leave now. Walk out, mount the gray, ride into the dusk before the first stars showed. No one would follow a drifter who'd already made his point. But he didn't move. Elias Whitaker wiped the same spot on the bar for the 3rd time, rag trembling. His gray mustache quivered when he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. You shouldn't have done that, mister. They'll be back, and they'll bring more. Harlan didn't look up. They already brought enough. Elias swallowed. Raphael, he don't forget easy. Said you got till sunup to clear out. Said if you're still here, come morning. He trailed off, eyes flicking toward the staircase. Harlan followed the look. Emma Whitaker had come down the last few steps without him noticing. She stood half in shadow, one hand on the banister, the other tucked against her ribs like she was holding herself together. The bruise on her wrist stood out dark against pale skin. A thumbprint ring, fresh enough to still be purple at the edges. She met Harlan's gaze for a heartbeat, then dropped her eyes. But not before he saw the fear there, and something harder underneath. Elias noticed too. His voice cracked. Leave her out of it. Please. Harlan's fingers tightened on the empty glass. He felt the old pull, the one that said, walk away. Let the town eat its own poison. He'd walked away from worse. From towns burning, from letters he couldn't answer fast enough, from faces that looked at him like he might be salvation and then learned better. But the girl's bruise looked too much like a promise someone else had made without asking her. He spoke quietly. Tell me about the sheriff. Elias froze. What sheriff? The one in the photograph. Harlan nodded toward the wall behind the bar. A faded tintype, nailed crooked, showing a younger man in a badge, mustache proud, eyes steady. The frame was dusty, but the glass had been wiped clean recently. Someone still cared. Elias's shoulders sagged. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a thread. Caleb Whitaker. Cal. My cousin. Town marshal till 8 months back. They said he was dead. Found his horse shot out near Bitter Creek, badge gone. But he ain't dead. They got him up at the old mine. Keeping books for him. Counting the silver they steal, the protection money, the men they chain to the picks. They got his wife and little girl too. Abigail and Lily. Use 'em to keep him in line. Harlan studied the photograph. The man in it looked like someone who'd once believed the badge meant something. Looked a little like Elias around the eyes. And the girl? Harlan asked, nodding toward Emma. Elias's face crumpled. El Cuervo. He's taken a shine to her. Says she'll be his wife whether she wants it or not. That's why she stays close to the saloon. I thought I could watch her. Protect her. His laugh was bitter, small. Look how well that's worked. Emma stepped forward then, boots soft on the boards. She didn't look at her father. She looked at Harlan. You didn't have to do what you did to Scar, she said. Her voice was steady, but thin, like wire stretched too tight. Now they'll come for you. And when they do, they'll come for us too. Harlan met her eyes. I know. She lifted her chin a fraction. Then why stay? He didn't answer right away. Outside, the sun had slipped lower. The light through the windows had gone bloody. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, sharp and lonely. Harlan felt the old ache in his shoulder, the one from a saber cut years back, the one that always woke up when trouble got close. He could still ride out, take the hit to his name, let them call him a coward who ran. It wouldn't be the first time. But the bruise on Emma's wrist, the photograph of Cal Whitaker, the way Elias's hands shook, they weren't just details anymore. They were weights. He pushed back from the bar, stood. I'll need to know more about the mine, he said. Elias's eyes widened. You're staying? Harlan didn't answer that either. He turned toward the door. Emma spoke again, softer. If you stay, they'll hurt him worse. My father. They'll make an example. Harlan paused, hand on the doorframe. The wood was warm from the dying sun. Then maybe it's time someone made an example of them. He stepped out onto the boardwalk. The street had gone quiet. A few townsfolk hurried past with heads down, glancing at him from under hat brims. Word traveled fast in a place like this. Already he could feel the eyes, the whispers starting. Gray-eyed stranger. Put Scar on his knees. Raphael warned him. He stood there a moment, letting the cooling air touch his face. The wanted posters fluttered again, El Cuervo's face staring back at him like an accusation. Then, from the north end of town, came the sound. Low at first, then rising. Hooves, many hooves. Dust rising in a long cloud under the red sky. Harlan's hand settled near his holster without thinking. Down the street, a rider peeled off from the approaching group. Black hat, raven feather catching the last light. Joaquin El Cuervo Vargas himself, back earlier than anyone expected. He reined in hard outside the saloon, horse snorting steam. His voice carried clear across the empty street, calm, almost amused. Who's this gray-eyed stranger everybody's talking about? The question hung in the cooling dusk. Harlan didn't move. But inside the saloon, behind the grimy window, Emma Whitaker's hand went to her bruised wrist and stayed there. The stable behind Old Lee's general store smelled of hay gone sour, horse sweat, and the faint iron bite of old tools. Moonlight slanted through the slats in thin silver bars, catching on the dust that never quite settled. A single lantern hung from a nail, its wick turned low, throwing long shadows across the dirt floor. Harlan stood in the center, coat open now, sleeves rolled to the elbows. The old saber scar on his left forearm stood out pale against tanned skin, raised, puckered, a reminder that moved when he did. Elias Whitaker leaned against a stall door, arms folded tight across his chest like he was holding his own ribs together. Doc Thorne sat on an overturned crate, hands clasped between his knees, the lines around his eyes deeper in the dim light. Rufus Roof Callahan stood near the back wall, thumbs hooked in his suspenders, face grim under the brim of his battered hat. Ben Foreman Harlan, distant kin or just a name coincidence, no one had asked, crouched near the floor, drawing in the dirt with a stick. Outside, the night carried the sounds of the saloon across the street. Raucous laughter rolling out in waves, bottles breaking, boots stomping on wood. Red lanterns had been hung along the porch rails, dozens of them, turning the whole front of Elias's place into a bloody glow. Joaquin El Cuervo Vargas had called his boys in. They were celebrating something, or preparing for it. Harlan looked down at the rough map Ben had scratched into the dirt. A crooked rectangle for the mine entrance, a smaller square for the assay office with its green door. A cluster of lines for the company houses where the hostages slept under guard. A dotted line snaking east. The old ventilation shaft, half forgotten, narrow enough for a child to crawl through. Ben's voice was low. Careful. Guards change every 6 hours. Dawn and dusk mostly. They keep maybe 40 men total. Half at the mine, half in town tonight. El Cuervo runs it like an army, uses the families as shields. Any trouble from a worker, they drag his wife or kid out front. Make him watch. Harlan nodded once. He took the stick from Ben, extended the ventilation line a little farther. This comes out behind the assay office? Close enough, Ben said. They don't post a man there. Figure the shafts collapsed years ago. Kids use it sometimes. Sneak food to their fathers. Small enough they don't get caught. Roof spoke up, voice gravelly. I got 3, maybe 4 kegs of black powder left in the smithy. Been saving it for, hell, I don't know what. Thought maybe one day I'd blow the whole damn mine myself. Never had the nerve. Harlan looked at him. You got the nerve now? Roof met his eyes, then looked away. Maybe. Elias shifted. His voice cracked. If we do this, Emma. He couldn't finish. Harlan set the stick down. She's already in it. You know that. Doc Thorne rubbed his face with both hands. We're talking about blowing up half the town to get at the mine. People die. Innocent people. Not if we do it right, Harlan said. But the words sounded thin even to him. Silence stretched. Outside, the laughter spiked again, someone singing off key, a woman's sharp cry cut short. Harlan spoke into the quiet. 3 months ago, I got a letter. Slipped out with a trader who owed Abigail Whitaker a favor. She wrote about the chains, the quotas, the way Lily cries herself to sleep every night. She wrote about Cal, how they broke him slow, day by day. Said if anyone was still out there who remembered what a badge used to mean. He trailed off. His right hand flexed, the old scar pulling tight. I kept the letter. Didn't answer it. Figured someone else would. No one spoke. Harlan looked at each man in turn. I can still ride out. Tonight. Be gone before moonset. You'll never see me again. And maybe they'll forget I was ever here. Elias's eyes filled. They won't forget. They'll take it out on her. On all of us. Harlan nodded slowly. I know. He reached down, smoothed one corner of the dirt map with his boot. "We'll use the powder to draw them out. Assay office first, then the livery if we can get it there. While they're running blind, we move the families through the vent shaft. Ben, you lead them out. Roof, you set the charges. Doc, you'll need your wagon ready at Bitter Creek Crossing, supplies, bandages, whatever you can carry." Ben frowned. "And you?" Harlan's mouth quirked, not quite a smile. "I'll be the distraction. They want the gray-eyed stranger? They can have him." Elias stepped forward. "You'll die." "Maybe," Harlan said, "but I've died before. Just never all the way." The words hung there. Outside, the singing stopped abruptly. A horse whinnied, sharp and startled. Then the stable door banged open. Young Jin Lee burst in, chest heaving, face streaked with sweat and dust. He was clutching an old Spencer rifle too big for him, barrel trembling. "Mr. Harlan," his voice cracked. "El Cuervo. He's got Emma, dragging her up the stairs in the saloon. Said tonight's the night. Said he's gonna make her his bride right now, in front of everybody." Elias made a sound like something breaking inside his chest. His hand went to the old Colt at his hip, shaky, but there. Harlan looked at the boy, then at the map in the dirt. No one moved for a long second. Harlan straightened. The lantern light caught the gray in his eyes, cold now, steady. He nodded once. "Begin." The word fell like a stone into still water. Outside, the red lantern swayed in the night wind, casting long bloody shadows across the street. And somewhere in the saloon, a woman's voice began to rise. Thin, desperate, and very much alone. The first explosion came without warning. A low, guttural boom rolled out from the direction of the assay office, shaking the ground beneath Silver Ridge like a giant had stamped his boot. Windows shattered in a glittering cascade down Main Street. The saloon's front glass blew inward in a storm of shards, lanterns swinging wildly on their chains. Harlan, crouched behind a water trough 2 blocks away, felt the shockwave punch through his chest. Dust and smoke billowed up thick and black, lit from below by the sudden hungry orange of fire. He had hoped for confusion. What he got was pandemonium. People poured from doorways, women clutching children, men half-dressed, boots slipping on the suddenly treacherous street. Screams cut through the crackle of burning wood. Horses screamed in the livery stable as flames licked up the walls. The second blast followed seconds later. Roof Callahan's keg in the livery itself, sending a pillar of flames skyward that turned the night bloody. Harlan ran low, coat flapping, revolver in hand, but not raised. He had told them, wait for the blasts, then move the families toward the church. But the plan had assumed order. What he saw now was terror wearing human faces. From the saloon porch, Joaquin El Cuervo Vargas stepped out, raven feather in his hat catching the firelight like a dark flag. His face was calm, too calm. He raised one hand, and the Black Vultures already pouring from side alleys fell into rough lines behind him. They moved fast, too fast. Harlan spotted Emma first. She was being dragged from Doc Thorne's office across the street, nightdress torn at the shoulder, bare feet scraping the dirt. Rafael El Zorro Vargas had her by the hair, silver-handled revolver pressed hard against her temple. Her eyes were wide, but she wasn't screaming, not yet. She was looking straight ahead, as if willing herself not to see the flames. Elias Whitaker broke from the shadows near the general store. "Emma!" The old man's voice cracked like dry wood. He had the old Colt in both hands, shaking so badly the barrel wavered. He took 3 steps into the open street. Rafael didn't hesitate. The silver revolver cracked once, sharp, flat, final. Elias staggered, knees buckling. He dropped the Colt, Blood bloomed dark across his shirt front. He reached one hand toward his daughter, mouth working soundlessly, then fell face first into the dirt. Emma made a small, broken sound. Not a scream. Something worse. Harlan felt it hit him like a second bullet. He started forward, instinct, not thought. But Ben Foreman Harlan grabbed his arm from the alley mouth, yanking him back. Not now. You'll get us all killed. The street was alive with muzzle flashes now. Black vultures firing into the dark, not aiming, just to keep heads down. A child cried somewhere near the burning livery. A woman's wail rose and cut off abruptly. El Cuervo's voice boomed over the chaos, carrying from the saloon steps like thunder off the mountains. "Listen up, Silver Ridge." He laughed, short, ugly. "You want to play with fire? Fine. But every minute I don't get my signal, we kill one hostage. Starting with the little Whitaker girl, Lily. You hear me, Shadow? You out there?" The name landed like a stone in Harlan's gut. He pressed against the alley wall, breath coming shallow. His left shoulder burned. Something had clipped him in the first rush, a grazing shot he hadn't even felt until now. Blood soaked through the duster, warm and sticky. His arm throbbed in time with his pulse. Ben's grip tightened. "We gotta move. Church, now." Harlan looked back toward the saloon. Emma was being hauled up the steps by Raphael, her struggles weakening. Elias lay unmoving in the street, blood pooling black under the firelight. Harlan's mouth tasted of copper and ash. He nodded once. They ran. The church stood at the end of the block, white clapboard glowing sickly in the flames. People streamed toward it, some crawling, some carrying others. Ben and Roof laid down what covering fire they could from doorways, shots cracking sharp against the roar of the burning town. A boy no older than Jin Lee stumbled past Harlan, face streaked with soot, one arm hanging limp. Inside the church, the air was thick with the smell of fear sweat and candle wax. Doc Thorne was already working by lantern light, ripping shirts into bandages. Women huddled in pews, children pressed against skirts. Someone was sobbing steadily, low and endless. Harlan staggered to a bench near the window. Doc Thorne looked up, saw the blood, and moved without a word. He cut the sleeve away, probed the wound with steady fingers. Harlan hissed through clenched teeth. "Through and through," Doc muttered. "Lucky. But you're burning up already. Fever's coming fast." Harlan didn't answer. He stared out the cracked window at the street. The fire had jumped. It was eating toward old Lee's store now. Flames licking the porch, smoke pouring from the upper windows. He saw movement inside. Two figures silhouetted against the orange glow, old Lee and young Jin, trapped behind a wall of heat and falling timbers. Harlan's hand clenched on the windowsill. Splinters bit into his palm. Doc finished tying the bandage. "You can't go back out there. Not like this." Harlan kept watching the burning store. The boy's face flashed in his mind. Jin Lee, clutching that too big rifle, eyes wide with something between terror and trust. He felt the weight of every eye in the church on him now. Not hope anymore. Desperation. They had followed him into this, and Elias Whitaker was dead because of it. Harlan closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, his voice came out quiet, almost calm. "New plan," he said. Doc Thorne paused, forceps still in hand. Harlan looked at him, then at Ben and Roof, standing near the door, faces streaked with soot and blood. "I go in alone, to the mine. Let them see me. Let them think they've won." Ben shook his head. "That's suicide." "Maybe," Harlan said. "But it buys time, gets their eyes off the town, off the kids." He looked back toward the burning store. Flames roared higher. A beam cracked and fell inside, sending sparks swirling into the night. Harlan whispered, more to himself than anyone. "Have to turn myself in." The words hung in the smoky air. Outside, the fire kept coming. And somewhere in the dark, a child's cry rose again, thin, distant, unanswered. The church smelled of old wood, candle smoke, and the sharp, metallic bite of blood and carbolic. Pre-dawn gray seeped through the narrow windows, turning the pews into long, pale shapes. Harlan lay on a bench near the altar, coat folded under his head, left arm bandaged tight across his chest. Fever ran hot under his skin. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt and beaded on his forehead. Every breath pulled at the wound in his shoulder, a dull fire that flared brighter each time his heart beat. Doc Thorne knelt beside him, wiping his brow with a damp rag that had once been a clean shirt. Roof Callahan stood near the door, arms crossed, staring out at the street where embers still glowed like dying eyes. Ben Foreman sat on the step of the pulpit, elbows on knees, face buried in his hands. Young Jin Lee crouched near Harlan's feet, clutching the old Spencer rifle across his lap, eyes wide and unblinking. The silence inside the church was heavier than the smoke outside. Harlan's voice came out rough, cracked from fever. Paper, ink. Doc hesitated, then reached into his bag and pulled out a small notebook and a stub of pencil. Harlan took them with his good hand. The pencil shook as he drew. Slow lines, careful despite the tremor. A ridgeline, a dotted path for the ventilation shaft, circles for the assay office and the company houses, arrows showing false signals from the opposite hill. Jin Lee watched every stroke. When Harlan's hand faltered, the boy reached out without thinking and steadied the paper. Harlan looked at him. The boy's face was streaked with soot, but his eyes were steady. Too steady for 12 years old. A soft knock at the side door. Ben rose, cracked it open. A black vulture stood there. Scarred cheek, black neckerchief loose, holding a folded scrap of paper like it was something dirty. He didn't step inside, just held it out. "From El Cuervo," he said, "to the gray-eyed stranger." Ben took it without a word. The man turned and walked back into the dark. Ben unfolded the note, read it silently. His jaw tightened. Harlan didn't ask. He kept drawing. Ben cleared his throat. "Says he knows who you are. Calls you Shadow of the Territories. Says one of his boys rode to Silver Springs last night. Description matched. Says if you don't walk into the mine alone before first light." He stopped, swallowed. "He starts with Lily Whitaker, then Abigail." The room went colder. Harlan's pencil paused. The point broke against the paper. He stared at the broken line for a long moment. Jin Lee's voice was small. "What's Shadow of the Territories?" Harlan exhaled through his nose. Old name, from the war, and after. He set the pencil down, looked at the faces around him, worn, frightened, waiting. "I was good at one thing back then," he said quietly. "Disrupting lines, blowing bridges, making camps think they were surrounded when they weren't. Got real good at it. Too good. After the war, I just wanted quiet. A place to sit without hearing guns." But the letter came. Abigail's letter. Slipped out somehow. Said the children cry every night. Said Cal was breaking. Said if anyone remembered what the law used to mean. He trailed off. His good hand clenched once, then opened. I kept it 3 months. Didn't answer. Figured someone else would. Doc Thorne's rag stilled on Harlan's forehead. "And now?" Harlan looked at him. "Now someone has to." He pushed himself up. The movement cost him. Pain lanced through his shoulder, vision blurring for a second. He steadied himself against the bench. "Jin," he said, "you still got those mirrors from your pa's store?" The boy nodded fast. "Brought 'em. 3 good ones. Take 'em to the East Ridge before light. Flash 'em like signal lamps. Make it look like 50 men up there." Jin swallowed. "I can do that." "Rough, black powder, whatever's left. Set small charges along the ridge. Smoke, not boom. Enough to look like artillery." Rough nodded once. "Got ram's horns in the smithy. Old ones. We blow 'em, sound like bugles. Cavalry coming." Ben leaned forward. "And you?" Harlan met his eyes. "I walk in the front gate. Let them see me. Let them think they've got the drop." Doc shook his head. "You're burning with fever. You can barely stand." "I can stand long enough." Jin Lee's voice cracked. "They'll kill you." Harlan looked down at the boy, saw the way his knuckles whitened on the rifle stock, saw the hero worship that had been there yesterday now cracked open, replaced by something rawer. Fear. For him. "Maybe," Harlan said, "but legends die easier than men." He reached down, slow, and pulled the small derringer from inside his right boot. Checked the loads. 2 shots. Closed it with a soft click. Jin Lee watched every movement. When Harlan looked up again, the boy's eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. Harlan held out the notebook. "You keep this. If I don't come back, you'll know what to do next." Jin took it. His hands shook too. Harlan straightened as much as the fever would let him, coat hanging loose, blood-stained bandage showing beneath the torn sleeve. He looked around the church one last time. Faces carved by firelight and loss. Then he turned toward the door. Outside, the sky was turning the color of old bruises, gray bleeding into pale rose. Embers still popped in the ruins of the street. Somewhere a dog barked once, hoarse and lonely. Harlan paused on the threshold, looked back at Jin Lee. "You know what to do with the mirrors?" The boy nodded. "Quick, sure." Harlan gave him the ghost of a nod. Then he stepped out into the pre-dawn dark, boots quiet on the ash-strewn boardwalk. The mine road stretched north, 3 miles of open desert under a sky that hadn't yet decided whether to forgive or condemn. He walked. No one followed. But behind him, in the church doorway, young Jin Lee stood clutching the notebook and the rifle, watching the tall figure in the frayed duster grow smaller against the coming light. And the silence that followed was heavier than any shot fired that night. The pre-dawn cold bit through Harlan's coat as he walked the last mile to the mine. Each step jarred the wounds, shoulder weeping fresh blood through the bandage, left arm hanging numb and useless at his side. Fever made the world tilt in slow waves. The desert floor seemed to breathe under his boots. 3 miles north of Silver Ridge, the old silver workings rose like a scar against the pale sky. Dark mouth of the main shaft, scattered tents, cook fires guttering low. Lanterns moved on the ridge above, Black Vultures already in place, rifles glinting. Harlan raised both hands as he approached the entrance. Empty palms, no revolver on his hip, only the derringer in his boot, 2 shots he might never get to use. Joaquin, El Cuervo Vargas, waited at the shaft mouth, black hat cocked, raven feather catching the first gray light. Raphael stood beside him, silver revolver pressed to Emma Whitaker's temple. She hung limp in his grip, unconscious, nightdress torn, face bruised and slack. Behind them, a line of hostages shuffled forward under guard. Abigail Whitaker clutching Lily to her chest. Caleb Calla Whitaker's face hollow with the knowledge that his wife and daughter were shields again. El Cuervo's smile was thin, satisfied. So the ghost walks into the light after all. Harlan stopped 10 paces out. "Let them go." El Cuervo laughed, low, rolling. You think you're a ghost? I'll make you a corpse, real slow. On the opposite ridge, a flash, sharp, deliberate. Then another. Young Jin Lee's mirrors catching the first pale rays, bouncing false signals across the valley. A moment later, thin smoke began to rise from hidden positions. Roof Callahan's small charges popping like distant gunfire. Then the low, mournful wail of Rams's horns rolled down the slopes, bugle-like, multiplied by echoes until it sounded like a regiment cresting the hill. The Black Vultures on the ridge shifted, heads turning, rifles swinging toward the phantom army. Murmurs rippled through their line. El Cuervo's smile faltered for half a heartbeat. Trick, he snarled. All tricks. But the doubt was there. Men peeled off the ridge, scrambling downslope to reinforce the entrance. The line thinned. Harlan took one step closer. Raphael's revolver tightened against Emma's skin. Stay where you are, Shadow. Harlan's good hand has stayed raised. His voice came out steady despite the fever. You wanted me. Here I am. El Cuervo drew his own pistol, long-barreled, scarred from use. On your knees. Harlan didn't kneel. El Cuervo's eyes narrowed. Kill the girl first. Let him watch. Raphael shifted his grip. The silver barrel gleamed. Harlan moved, fast, desperate. Dropped to one knee as though obeying, right hand flashing to his boot. The Derringer came up in the same motion. One shot cracked sharp in the cold air. Raphael jerked. The silver revolver flew from his hand, blood blooming across his chest. He staggered, eyes wide with surprise, then crumpled. Emma fell with him, hitting the dirt hard. The ridge erupted. Shouts, rifles barking as vultures turned back toward the entrance. Harlan rolled left, pain exploding through his shoulder. El Cuervo fired, once, twice, the bullets kicking dirt beside Harlan's head. Harlan came up on his knees. El Cuervo charged, knife already drawn, face twisted with fury. Harlan met him halfway. They collided in a tangle of limbs and dust. El Cuervo's blade sliced across Harlan's ribs, hot, shallow. Harlan grunted, caught the wrist, twisted. They went down together, rolling toward the shaft mouth. El Cuervo was stronger, fresher. He pinned Harlan, knee on his wounded shoulder, knife rising again. You're done, Ghost. No more tricks. Harlan's vision swam. Fever, blood loss, pain. But he saw the knife coming. He bucked once, hard. The blade drove into his side instead of his chest. White fire. He gasped, tasted copper. With his last strength, he wrenched the knife hand down, using El Cuervo's own momentum. The blade turned, sank into the gang leader's chest. El Cuervo's eyes widened. A wet gasp escaped him. He stared down at the hilt buried to the guard, then at Harlan. Disbelief. Then nothing. He slumped forward. Harlan shoved the body off. Lay there a moment, breathing ragged, blood pooling under him. Around them the fight splintered, Black Vultures hesitating, then breaking as Cal Whitaker roared and charged the nearest guard, bare hands. Ben Foreman and the few townsmen who'd followed burst from the smoke, rifles barking. The line collapsed. Con Tin scattered. Abigail pulling Lily behind a rock. Doc Thorne running from the ridge to reach Emma. Harlan pushed himself to one knee beside El Cuervo's body. Blood dripped from his side, his shoulder, his ribs. The sun cleared the eastern ridge, cold gold light spilling across the valley. Emma stirred. Doc reached her, lifted her gently. Lily ran to her father. Abigail folded around them both. Cal Whitaker stood over a fallen vulture, chest heaving, tears cutting tracks through the soot on his face. Harlan watched it all through blurring vision. He whispered, barely audible. Sometimes, you just gotta keep getting up. Till the last time. The words hung in the still air. He looked south, toward Silver Ridge, where smoke still rose in thin black fingers from the ruins of Main Street. Victory, yes, but the town was scarred. Families broken. Elias Whitaker gone forever. Harlan stayed on one knee a moment longer, hand pressed to the wound in his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. The sun climbed higher, and somewhere behind him, the faint sound of hoofbeats began. Townsmen coming up the road, or perhaps more vultures fleeing, or maybe just the wind carrying echoes. He didn't turn to look. He simply stayed there, kneeling in the dust beside the dead man who had once ruled this valley, waiting for whatever came next. The sun rose slow and merciless over Silver Ridge, spilling pale gold across the charred skeleton of Main Street. Smoke still curled from blackened timbers, thin and gray, carrying the sour stink of wet ash and scorched pine. The fire had burned itself out in the small hours, leaving behind a ragged line of gutted buildings. The livery reduced to smoldering beams, old Lee's store a hollow shell. The saloon's porch sagging like a broken spine. Men and women moved through the wreckage in quiet, mechanical rhythm, sweeping glass, hauling charred planks, digging shallow graves at the edge of town where the ground was still soft. Harlan sat on the edge of a water trough outside what was left of Doc Thorne's office. His coat hung open, sleeves rolled back. The bandages on his shoulder and side were fresh, but already spotting red. Fever had broken sometime before dawn, leaving him hollowed out, cold despite the climbing sun. Doc Thorne knelt in front of him, working in silence, snipping old cloth, dabbing carbolic that stung like regret, wrapping tight with practiced hands. "You'll carry these scars," Doc said, not looking up. "Shoulder'll ache when it rains. Side'll pull when you breathe deep. Nothing fancy, just reminders." Harlan nodded once. He didn't need reminding. The pain was already familiar company. Footsteps approached, soft, hesitant. Emma Whitaker stopped a few paces away, holding a tin cup of water in one hand, clean strips of cloth in the other. Her face was pale, eyes swollen from crying she hadn't let anyone see. The bruise on her wrist had darkened to deep violet. She wore one of her father's old shirts over her torn nightdress. Too big, sleeves rolled up, the collar still carrying the faint smell of Elias's tobacco. She set the cup beside him. Her voice came out small. "Thought you might be thirsty." Harlan took the cup, drank slow. The water tasted of iron and dust. Emma didn't move. She watched his hands, steady despite everything, and then his face. "You're leaving?" she said. Not a question. Harlan set the cup down. "Road's long." She looked toward the northern horizon, where the mine road disappeared into heat haze. Pa always said a man who keeps moving doesn't have to look back. But he never said it was easy. Harlan met her eyes. "It isn't." Emma swallowed. "He'd have wanted to thank you. For trying. For giving us a chance." Harlan's throat tightened. He looked away, toward the fresh mound of earth at the cemetery's edge. Elias Whitaker's grave, unmarked yet, only a simple wooden cross Doc had hammered together at first light. "I didn't give anybody anything," he said quietly. "You all took it back yourselves." Emma's lip trembled, but she held it together. "Maybe, but we wouldn't have if you hadn't come." Silence settled between them, thick, heavy with what couldn't be unsaid. She reached out, hesitant, and pressed the clean cloth into his good hand. "For the road." Harlan took it, folded it carefully, tucked it inside his coat. Emma stepped back. "Do you ever stop?" she asked. "Find a place? Stay?" Harlan looked at her a long moment. The question hung there like smoke. Wherever they need a ghost, he said finally. "I'll go." Emma nodded once, slow, accepting. Then she turned and walked away, shoulders straight despite the weight she carried. Harlan pushed himself to his feet. The world tilted for a second, then steadied. He walked to the hitching rail where the dapple gray waited, saddled and patient. The horse nickered softly as he untied the reins. Young Jin Lee stood a few paces off, still clutching the old Spencer. The boy's face was clean now, but the soot lines around his eyes hadn't washed away completely. He looked up at Harlan. Admiration there, yes, but something else too. Fear, the kind that comes when you see a legend bleed like any other man. "You coming back?" Jin asked. Harlan mounted slow, favoring his side. The saddle leather creaked under him. "Not likely," he said. Jin nodded. Didn't argue. Just stood there as Harlan turned the gray north. The street was quiet now. No shouts, no laughter. People worked in twos and threes, lifting debris, carrying water, speaking in low voices. Cal Whitaker walked past with Abigail and Lily, the little girl clinging to her mother's skirt. Cal's badge was back on his chest, pinned crooked but there. He met Harlan's eyes for a second. A nod, brief, grateful, exhausted. Harlan touched his hat brim. Then he nudged the gray forward. The horse walked slow down the ruined street, past the saloon's broken doors, past the mound where Elias lay, past the last standing lantern. Its glass cracked, wick long since burned out, but still swaying gently in the morning breeze like a fallen star. Harlan reined in at the edge of town, looked back one last time. Silver Ridge lay quiet under the rising sun. Smoke drifting, people moving, life beginning again in small, painful pieces. No one cheered. No one waved. They simply worked. And in their faces was the knowledge that freedom had come at a price no one could repay. Harlan turned the gray south, toward whatever road came next. The horse's hooves made soft, steady sounds on the hardpack. Behind him, the town grew smaller, and in his side, the fresh scar pulled with every breath, a reminder that ghosts bleed too. He rode on. The desert swallowed him slow. "Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours, thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals, narration, and script development, the emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.